Good day everyone, we're back once again for another video report presentation where you will learn laws and cases that are relevant to our industry. By the way, my name is Maria Ellen P. Onyot, a student of Business Gem 3A, and I hope after this presentation, you learn something from this. Today, we will tackle the Chapter 7, which is entitled The Laws Regulating Transportation Establishments. And in connection to this, we are all aware that transportation has been essential to human progress, enabling travel, trade, and tourism. From the wheel's invention to modern air and sea travel, advancements have made destinations more accessible but also come with safety and regularity challenges. In the Philippines, tourism flourishes due to its cultural and natural beauty, but transportation safety remains a concern. While Filipinos excel in various transport professions, the country has also faced serious accidents. So this chapter or this whole topic examines key transportation laws that regulate land, air, and sea travel, ensuring passengers' safety and a reliable tourism industry. Are you now ready to learn all these transportation laws? Alright. But before we get down to the topic, let us know what could be the topic outline and learning objectives for this chapter. Here's the topic outline for this chapter. First, we will talk all about the laws governing common carriers. Second is regulating of the transportation industry. Third is accreditation of transportation vehicles by the Department of Tourism. Another one is specific transportation laws. Another is traffic and road safety laws. We will lastly talk about regulation of tricycles, pedicabs, and calesas. So here we also have the learning objectives, and after this lesson, students is expected to identify the laws affecting the transportation sector. Second is to identify the rights of passengers of commercial transportation, and lastly is to explain the relevance of these laws to the promotion of tourism in the country. Alright, let's start now. So, have you ever wondered who is responsible if an accident occurs while riding a bus, riding a jeepney, or a ferry or an airplane? So the law provides clear guidelines, and today I will break them down for you one by one. So, does anybody here familiar with this term, common carrier? And today, we will talk about this one. So, according to Article 1732 of the Civil Code, common carriers refer to individuals or companies engaged in the business of transporting passengers or goods for compensation. So can you give me example for this? Well, you're right. These businesses includes buses, airlines, ferries, and freight services. What sets them apart is that they offer their services to the general public rather than operating privately. So due to their nature, common carriers have a legal obligation to ensure the safety and security of their passengers and cargo, requiring them to exercise extraordinary diligence in their operation. So now, let's talk about the law on common carriers. So the primary law that governs common carriers is the Civil Code of the Philippines, as clearly implied from Article 1766 thereof, which states that in all matters not regulated by this code, the rights and obligations of common carriers shall be governed by the Code of Commerce and special laws. So this means that the law governing common carriers is mainly found in the Civil Code of the Philippines. And Article 1766 states that if something is not covered by the Civil Code, then the Code of Commerce or other special laws will apply. This ensures that the rights and obligations of common carriers are well defined. And also, not all transportation services are considered common carriers. They are private carriers, and those that only provide transport for specific clients or agreements, such as logistic companies that deliver goods for a single business. The key difference is that the common carriers have a much higher duty of care because they serve the public. So in connection to this, we will talk about the nature of contract of carriage. So a contract to transport passengers is quite different in kind and degree from any other contractual relation, and this is because of the relation which an air carrier sustains with the public. It invites people to avail the comforts and advantages it offers. So the contract of carriage therefore generates a relation attended with a public duty. Neglect or malfeasance of the carrier's employees naturally could give ground for an action for damages. So this means that the contract of carriage is unique because it involves a direct responsibility to passengers and customers. Transportation companies invite the public to use their services, so they are legally obligated to ensure safety and comfort. If they fail to meet this duty, passengers can seek compensation for damages caused by negligence. So, since we are talking about responsibilities and reputation, here are the common carrier responsibilities. And for this, the Civil Code of the Philippines sets clear rules regarding the duties of common carriers. So, and according to Article 1733, common carriers must observe extraordinary diligence in transporting passengers and goods. Article 1755, they must use the utmost care and foresight to ensure safe travel, where utmost caution is used to prevent accidents. And according to Article 1756, if passenger is injured or dies, the carrier is automatically presumed negligent unless they can prove they exercised extraordinary diligence. And lastly, for their last responsibility, according to Article 1757, carriers cannot waive their responsibility by posting notices, issuing disclaimers, or adding conditions to tickets. This means that passengers have strong legal protection, and common carriers cannot simply post signs saying, "Ride at your own risk." The law does not allow that. So, now, when does the carrier-passenger relationship begin and end? So, the responsibility of a common carrier begins the moment a passenger steps onto their premises. Example given is bus terminal, airport, or train station. And this continues until the passenger has a reasonable time to leave the carrier's premises at the destination. So, for example, assuming that you enter a bus terminal and wait for your bus. So, the bus company is already responsible for safety. Also, if you arrive at your destination but get injured while stepping off the bus, then the carrier is still liable. So, as I said earlier, that one of the responsibility of the common carrier is providing extraordinary diligence. And this is the highest standard of care. So, common carriers must exercise a higher degree of care than ordinary businesses. They are expected to anticipate potential risk and take proactive measures to prevent harm. But what does this mean? So, this means that they must anticipate potential dangers and prevent them. Also, they must maintain their vehicles regularly and ensure they are in top condition. So, it is necessary to have a double check before riding them or traveling. Another one is they must hire qualified drivers and crew members trained to handle emergencies. So if they fail in any of these duties, they can be held liable for any accidents that occur. Regular businesses, common carriers are automatically presumed negligent if an accident occurs. They can only avoid liability by proving they exercise extraordinary diligence during the entire trip. So the law is very strict when it comes to passenger safety. If an accident happens and a passenger is injured or dies, the carrier is automatically presumed to be at fault. So the only way for a common carrier to avoid liability is to prove they did everything possible to prevent that accident. So that is why common carriers must always operate with the highest level of caution. So that's why more delikado jud ang naay like driving under influence and even like kuwang og tog kay makakos ni siya og accidents. In connection with the liabilities of common carriers, here is another law that relates to these liabilities, which is the liabilities of common carriers for the acts of employees and strangers. So, Article 1759. So, this stated that common carriers are liable for the death or injuries to passengers to the negligence of willful acts of the former's employees. Although such employees may have acted beyond the scope of their authority or in violation of the orders of the common carriers, this liability of the common carriers does not cease upon proof that they exercise the diligence of a good father of a family in the selection and supervision of their employees. So, for example, if a bus driver races with another vehicle and crashes, the bus company is still liable for any injuries or deaths. And another example is if a flight attendant mistreats a passenger, the airline can be held responsible for the damages. This means that passengers are protected by law and transportation companies cannot avoid responsibility by simply blaming their employees. So we will talk about the due diligence in hiring and supervision. So for a company to ensure that the safety of passengers, it must do more than just check if an applicant has a professional driver's license. So just like in our industry, where dili enough ang ato ang skills, but also we need the attitude. So an employee of a common carrier must have the ability to assess the applicant's experience, qualifications, and employment record before hiring. Another one is to implement strict policies for employee behavior, operations, and safety. Another one is enforce and monitor compliance with these policies consistently. So for shipping companies, due diligence also includes that ensuring ships are seaworthy and properly equipped, and hiring competent and trained crew members for safe navigation. And now, let's tackle about the enforcement of liability of common carriers. Common carrier can be held liable in the following ways. So, victims of accidents caused by common carriers can file legal cases depending on the situation. First is if a passenger is injured or dies, their family can sue the company for breach of contract of carriage, such as culpa contractual. Another one is if a pedestrian or stranger is injured or killed while transporting or have been accidentally killed, their family can first file a criminal case against the driver for reckless imprudence, and second is to file a civil lawsuit against the company and driver for negligence, such as culpa aquiliana or quasi-delict. This means that companies must take full responsibility for their operations, whether the victim is a passenger or an outsider of the business, just like a passerby. So, another is types of damages that can be recovered by victims of accidents. So now let's talk about the damages that can be recovered during the accident. So, victims of accidents caused by common carriers may claim the following damages. First is the actual damages, just like medical expenses, hospitalization, funeral costs, and many more. Second is the unrealized profits, so compensation for the lost income based on life expectancy. Another one is the moral damages. This is compensation for emotional distress, especially in case of fraud, bad faith, or loss of life. So, another one is the exemplary damages, imposed to discourage reckless behavior and gross negligence. Another one is the death indemnity, in which compensation for loss of life based on legal rulings. Another one is the attorney fees, in which awarded when exemplary damages are given. Also, we have the nominal damages, given when no substantial loss is proven, but the court finds it necessary to award a small amount as compensation. For example, in the Metro Manila Transit Corporation versus Court of Appeals case on the year 1998. So the court ruled that a 50,000 attorney's fee was reasonable because the company was found guilty of negligence. Since we are done now talking about the common carriers, let's now talk about the nature of airline, bus, and shipping tickets. Alright, so do you have any idea what could be the best evidence of a contract carriage? That is the passage ticket. So, since under our jurisprudence, an airline, bus, or shipping ticket is considered to be a contract of adhesion, considering that all the provisions thereof are prepared and drafted only by the carrier. The only participation left of the other party is to affix his signature thereto. In such situation, the Supreme Court ruled that the terms thereof must be interpreted against the party who drafted the same. In this case, the carrier means that when you buy a plane, bus, or a ship ticket, you enter into a contract of carriage with the carrier. But here's the catch. You don't get to negotiate the terms because they are pre-drafted by the carrier. This is why transportation tickets are called contracts of adhesion. Even if first, you don't sign the ticket, second is you don't read the terms, and lastly is the text is small and hard to understand. So, the Supreme Court has ruled that the contract remains valid. However, courts will closely examine these contracts to protect passengers from unfair conditions. So if there's uncertainty in the ticket's terms, the law will interpret it in favor of the passenger. Alright, so another topic is the regulation of the transportation business. So the Department of Transportation and Communications is responsible for first is to plan out and regulate transportation and communication systems in the Philippines. Second is to ensure transportation services will make sure that they are fast, safe, efficient, and reliable. Third is evaluating whether a transportation project is necessary and beneficial to the public. For example, if new bus route is proposed, then the DOTC decides if it's necessary and safe before granting approval. Now let's talk about the regulation of air transportation business. So this is about the airport system or the safety of airline services. So according to Legislative Act number 3909 on the year 1931, which was established aviation regulations, later amended by Act 3996 to include licensing and inspection requirements. Another is Republic Act number 776 on the year 1952, created the Civil Aeronautics Board and defined its powers over air transportation. And according to Executive Order number 125, created the Air Transportation Office or ATO for technical and operational civil aviation matters. So, what could be the functions of the Civil Aeronautics Board or the CAB? So its function is to regulate the economic aspect of air transportation. Second is to supervise air carriers, their property rates and services. Third is to issue, modifies, or cancels permits and certificates of public convenience and necessity. And lastly, they are the one to regulate whether the foreign carriers need presidential approval to operate in the Philippines. So in connection with this, with the foreign and nationals who can operate a domestic airline. So under Philippine law, only Filipinos or companies that are at least 60% owned by Filipinos can operate domestic air transportation unless a treaty allows otherwise. Okay, so Air Transportation Office or ATO, ensuring aviation safety. So the Air Transportation Office or ATO handles the technical and operational side of aviation. It is responsible for registering and inspecting aircraft, setting safety rules for air travel, operating and maintaining airports, investigating aircraft accidents to improve aviation safety. So, essentially, while the CAB focuses on the business operations, the ATO ensures planes and airports meet safety standards. Is when can CAB issue a certificate of public convenience and necessity? So if an airline wants to operate, it must prove that it is fit, willing, and able to provide air transportation services. The service is needed by the public, and without this certification, a carrier cannot legally operate. Before I forgot, we will talk about the aircraft registration. So in the Philippines, only Filipino citizens or Filipino-owned companies can register aircraft, in which aircraft must not be registered under foreign laws to qualify for Philippine registration. The certificate of registration serves as proof of ownership, but if there's a dispute or if the aircraft is leased, ownership can still be questioned in court. Since we're done talking air transportation, we will now talk about the regulations governing transportation in the Philippines, covering maritime and land transport regulations. So whether we're flying on an airplane, taking a ferry, or riding a bus, the government has strict rules to ensure safety, efficiency, and public welfare. So, regulation of the shipping industry. Now let's talk about the maritime industry. So, the Maritime Industry Authority or MARINA is the main agency that regulates shipping in the Philippines. This was established in 1974 and it ensures that all vessels operating in the country meet safety and service standards. So this is the key functions of MARINA. So first is the registering vessels, approving domestic shipping routes, inspecting ships for safety compliance, and setting and regulating shipping rates. So only Filipino citizens or companies, at least 60% Filipino-owned, can operate domestic shipping services just like the air transportation. However, if no local vessel is available, foreign ships may be granted a special permit. So we will now talk about the regulation of land transportation. So in land transportation, there are two main government agencies oversee the industry. This is the Land Transportation Office and the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board or the LTFRB. So LTO ensures proper vehicle registration and this is their responsibility. So they are responsible for registering motor vehicles, issuing driver's licenses, and implementing emission testing requirements under the Clean Air Act, while the LTFRB are responsible to regulate public transport. They oversee public transport operators and ensures they follow safe and efficient services. The FRB has a power to approve or cancel transport franchises or the CPC and determine bus and jeepney routes. Third is to set and regulate public transport fares. And only LTFRB can regulate fares, transport operators, and cannot set their own prices without approval. So, why is transportation regulation is necessary or important? So, they are important because they ensure safety and security for passengers and cargo. They also protect the public from unfair pricing in shipping and land transport. And they can guarantee that the transport operators maintain service quality, and without this regulations or laws, we would have unregulated pricing, safety risk, and unreliable transport services. Accreditation of transportation vehicles by the Department of Tourism. So the accreditation of transportation vehicles by the DOT ensures that vehicles used for tourism meet specific operational, maintenance, and safety standards. Although this accreditation is not mandatory, it enhances the credibility and marketability of transport services, making them more attractive to tourists. So tourist transport vehicles play a crucial role in providing safe and comfortable travel experiences. So it is the job of DOT to accredit it to ensure that these vehicles meet high quality standards. While not required by the law, accreditation helps transportation providers gain a competitive edge by ensuring passengers that their services are reliable and well maintained. By following DOT regulations, transport operators can build trust with tourists and contribute to the overall growth of the tourism industry. So in this section, which is standard requirements for tourist and land vehicles, ensuring that the safety, comfort, and efficiency of tourist transportation is essential for thriving tourism industry. So in this discussion, we will explore the standard requirements for tourist, land, and water transport vehicles and how they contribute to a safe and enjoyable travel experiences. So now let's begin with land transport. So tourist land transport vehicles must meet strict standards before they can operate. First, they must pass a roadworthiness inspection by the Department of Tourism or the DOT. This ensures that vehicles are safe and fit for travel. And to maintain quality, tourist buses and coasters must not exceed 10 years from their manufacturing date, while tourist cars are limited to 5 years, except for luxury vehicles, which can be used for up to 10 years. Safety is a top priority. That is the main goal of the DOT, since we are handling people. So all vehicles must be left-hand drive, air-conditioned, and equipped with fire extinguishers and first aid kits. And buses and coasters must also have a public address system to communicate with passengers during trips. Additionally, operators must provide adequate garage, repair, and parking facilities to maintain their fleet. And before a vehicle can be registered or transferred, a police clearance from the Philippine National Police or PNP is required. This ensures that the vehicle is legally compliant and safe for tourism use. So, now let's move on to tourist water transport vessels. So just like land transport, these vessels must meet specific requirements too to guarantee passenger safety and comfort. So for passenger convenience, all vessels must have separate restrooms for men and women. On long-haul trips, a shared toilet and bath in the cabin area must be provided. Essential hygiene items like soap, tissue, and hand towels should always be available. So a receptionist must be present to assist passengers, and a refreshment area must be well stocked. On longer trips, vessels must have a dining area that can accommodate at least 1/4 of the passenger per sitting, with well-maintained furniture. To enhance the passenger experience, a promenade or open-air deck must be available for relaxation. A designated baggage area ensures proper storage for travelers' belongings. And also, the service quality also plays a key role. So, staff members must be well-trained, neatly groomed, and courteous. Those working in frontline positions must be able to speak English to assist international travelers. And lastly, safety measures must be strictly followed, in which vessels must have proper lighting arrangement as per Philippine Merchant Marine rules and regulation, ensuring visibility and security during travel. Next topic, this is surely is necessary to be discussed, as operating a tourist transport service requires proper accreditation to ensure compliance with safety, legal, and service standards. Since we are done talking about the standard requirements of tourist and land transportation, now we'll discuss the necessary documents for accreditation based on the type of transport service, whether it is designated in land, water, or air. Alright, so all tourist transport operators must submit essential documents, including a mayor's permit or municipal license to prove legal operation. Second is to provide business registration documents, whether for a sole proprietorship, partnership, or corporation. Or another is to provide a proof of ownership or list of a garage and maintenance depot for land transport operators. Another one is a list of officials and employees certified under oath, and any other documents required by the department. Now let's go over to the additional requirements for each transport category. So we'll talk about the land transport requirements first. So land transport operators must obtain an LTFRB certificate of franchise or authorization along with government-approved transportation rates. Additionally, they must submit photos of their vehicles clearly displaying the company name and logo. And that is for the land transport requirements. Now we will talk about the water transport requirements. So for water transport, certificate of public convenience and necessity from the maritime industry or authority is required. Operators must also provide approved transportation rates, route details, and photos of their vessels showcasing their company branding. And last but not the least is the air transport requirements. So The air transport operators must secure a certificate of public convenience and necessity from the Civil Aeronautics Board, along with approved fare rates, route schedules, and photos of their aircraft. Additionally, they need to provide a list of maintenance personnel with valid ATO licenses. Okay, so these requirements ensure that all tourist transport services can operate legally, safely, and efficiently. So accreditation plays a vital role in upholding the quality of tourism transportation, helping to maintain high standards for both local and international travelers. In this section of our discussion, we will discuss two important laws that promote safety and welfare in transportation. So first, let's talk about the seatbelt law and why it is crucial for drivers and passengers. So the seatbelt law was enacted to minimize the risk of injuries and fatalities in road accidents. It strictly requires all drivers and front seat passengers in both public and private vehicles to wear seatbelts while the engine is running. For public transport, the driver must ensure that the front seat passengers comply before starting the trip. If passenger refuses, they cannot continue their journey. Additionally, young children aged 6 and below are prohibited from sitting in the front seat as they are more vulnerable to injuries in case of an accident. So, there's also a law mandates that vehicles without proper seatbelt system cannot be imported and new vehicles must comply for registration. So non-compliance results in penalties and vehicle registration denial. So now let's move on to another important regulation, which is the transportation of animals safely under the Animal Welfare Act. Okay, so the Animal Welfare Act ensures that animals are transported under humane conditions. Operators of land, air, and water public transportation must provide proper facilities, food, and water for animals traveling for more than 12 hours. Since they are prone for stress manggod and especially for dogs, may possibility nga mga matay if kanang bitang without proper care. So overcrowding and placing animals in unsafe areas like trunks are considered cruelty and are punishable under the law. So to transport animals, a written permit from the Bureau of Animal Industry is required. For international travel, additional documents such as rabies and health certificates are needed. Without this, animals may be detained upon arrival. Importers must comply with quarantine procedures to prevent the spread of diseases. And infected animals may be euthanized to protect public health. So these laws emphasize the importance of safety for both humans and animals. Following them ensures responsible transportation and helps avoid accidents and legal consequences. So let's all be mindful of these regulations and prioritize safety. Okay, now let's jump to the topic about the traffic law. So to begin with, Republic Act 7227 allows the importation of vehicles into the Subic Bay Freeport with minimal government intervention. This is meant to attract businesses and investors to the area. However, the government has strict regulations to control vehicle importation, in which Executive Order 156 bans use motor vehicle imports except in Freeport zones or for specific cases such as vehicles owned by returning residents, diplomatic officials, or those categorized as special purpose vehicles like ambulances and fire trucks. This helps control the entry of second-hand cars that may not meet local safety and environmental standards. Next is the Republic Act of 6537, in which the Anti-Carnapping Act. This requires customs officials to report all imported vehicles to the Land Transportation Office or the LTO within 7 days of arrival. This includes details like the make, type, and serial numbers of the engine and chassis. If a vehicle is missing a serial number, it will be held until properly registered. Importers must also keep a detailed record of vehicle transactions for transparency. Environmental protection is also a priority. So under the Philippine Clean Air Act of 1999, no new imported or locally assembled vehicle can be registered at the LTO without a proof of compliance with emission standards. This means importers must obtain Certificate of Conformity from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or the DNR, to ensure that vehicles meet pollution control measures. And finally, for safety purposes, there is a law in which this is the Republic Act of 8750, or where we talked about earlier, which is the seatbelt law. This prohibits the importation of vehicles without operational seatbelt systems. This law ensures that all imported vehicles meet basic safety requirements before they can be used on Philippine roads. Overall, this regulation helps prevent smuggling, protecting consumers from low-quality or unsafe vehicles, and promote environmental responsibility. And if you plan to import a vehicle or buy one, make sure to follow these legal requirements to avoid penalties. Now, let's move on to another topic on this chapter, in which it is the public service law. So, public services are businesses that provide transportation for a fee because they impact public welfare and they are subject to government regulation. This is why operators must obtain a Certificate of Public Convenience, or CPC, before they can legally run their services. This certificate is not a property right, but a privilege granted by the government to ensure operators meet safety and service standards. So to qualify for a CPC, an applicant must meet 3 key requirements. First is to be a Filipino citizen or a company with at least 60% Filipino of ownership. Second is have the financial capability to maintain and operate the service. Third is to prove that their service will benefit the public in a proper and efficient way. Another one is to various government agencies handle this certificate based on the type of transport. So first is the Civil Aeronautics Board, regulates the air transportation, while the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board, or the LTFRB, oversees the buses, jeepneys, and taxis, or the land transportation, and meanwhile the Maritime Industry Authority, or the Marina, handles ferries and water transport. Without proper authorization, public transportation services cannot legally operate. These regulations ensure passenger safety, fair pricing, and overall service quality. So in summary, public service laws protect commuters and maintain order in the transport industry. And if you're planning to run a transport businesses someday, compliance with this law is crucial to avoid penalties and ensure smooth operations. So, and in this part, we will talk about the traffic laws in the Philippines, in which rules that ensure safety and order on the roads. So let's go over some of the key laws and their importance. So first is the Land Transportation and Traffic Code under the Republic Act number 4136, in which lays down the essential traffic laws in the country. Here are the most important points. So, vehicle registration. Before you can legally drive a car on public roads, it must be registered with LTO, or Land Transportation Office. If you're a tourist, you can use your car for up to 90 days, but you must register it with LTO. Second is the driver's license, and you must have a valid driver's license to operate any vehicle. If you're caught driving without one, you could face fines or penalties. Third is the vehicle safety. Vehicles should not carry more passengers or cargo than their maximum capacity, but they must also have functional brakes, horns, and warning devices. The fourth is the speed limits. Drivers must follow speed limits and drive cautiously, considering traffic and road conditions. Fifth is overtaking and right-of-way. Always check for oncoming traffic before overtaking, and at intersections, vehicles on the right have the right-of-way. Pedestrians crossing at marked crosswalks also have priority. 6 is the parking rules. So parking in restricted areas like intersections, crosswalks, and fire hydrants is illegal. You cannot park on sidewalks or alleys either way. Seventh one is driving under the influence, or DUI. So drunk driving or driving under the influence of drugs is a serious offense and can lead to accidents, injuries, or even death. Eighth is traffic obstruction. Stopping in the middle of the road to load or unload passengers or cargo is illegal because it disrupts traffic flow. Another one is duties in accidents. So, if you're involved in a vehicular accident, you must provide your license, name, and vehicle details. If someone is injured, you must help, unless you're in danger or seeking medical assistance also. So these laws exist to ensure that roads are safe for everyone. By following traffic rules, we can reduce accidents and improve road discipline. And for our last part on our topic for this chapter, which is the laws regulating tricycles, pedicabs, and kalasas unlimited access highways. So these laws regulate the operation of tricycles, pedicabs, and kalasas under local government control, restrict access to certain highways, and set accreditation standards for kalasa drivers. So the first thing we will talk about is the regulation of this public sectors of public services under the Local Government Code of 1991. So, local government units or LGUs like cities and municipalities have the power to regulate tricycles, pedicabs, and kalasas within their jurisdiction. The regulation of tricycles must follow guidelines set by the Department of Transportation and Communications, now to be called as Department of Transportation or DOT. So this provision ensures that transportation policies are tailored to the needs of each locality. Cities with high traffic congestion may impose stricter regulations on tricycles, while smaller towns may allow them more freedom. The goal is to balance convenience and road safety. So the second law enacted is the Limited Access Highway Act or the Republic Act 2000 and Administrative Order Number 1. So the DOTR is authorized to design and regulate highways, including restricting vehicle access. Bicycles, tricycles, and pedicabs and motorcycles are prohibited on limited access highways. And the government uses police power to regulate highway use for public safety based on what is deemed reasonable. So limited access highway, under said law, the Department of Transportation and Communication is authorized to design any limited access facility and to regulate, restrict, or prohibit access as to best serve the traffic for which such facility is intended. On February 19, 1968, Secretary Antonio V. Requeza of the Department of Public Works and Communication issued Administrative Order Number 1, which prohibited motorcycles, pedicabs, tricycles, and bicycles on limited access highways, such as expressways, are designed for fast-moving vehicles. Allowing slow-moving or non-motorized vehicles on these roads would be dangerous and cause accidents. So the government enforces this restriction as part of its study to ensure road safety. And last but not the least is the accreditation of the kalisa drivers. So a Filipino citizen aged 18 years above, physically and mentally fit, and of good moral character can apply for this accreditation. Applicants must submit documents including a mayor's permit, police clearance, a health certificate, and a proof of completing a kalasa driver seminar. So this ensures that only qualified and responsible individuals operate kalasas, which are often used in tourist areas such as vegan. Proper accreditations help maintain public safety, professionalism, and welfare of both drivers and horses. So, just like other transportation, in kalasa, there is a minimum requirements. So, first is kalasas must meet specific standards for safety and hygiene. For carriage, it must be well built, neatly painted, clean, and comfortable. And for the horse, it must be in good physical condition and properly cared for. So for roadworthiness, it must be fit for public roads. And for seating capacity, it must have a maximum of 2 passengers. And it must have a first aid kit required on board. And for horse waste receptacle, to prevent littering and maintain hygiene. And for drivers, it must be trained, well-groomed, courteous, in uniform, and carry a DOT-issued ID. And for the routes, limited to tourist areas and must not disrupt traffic. And for its fare, must follow government-approved rates. So these rules ensure Kalasa operation remains safe, professional, and environmentally friendly, especially in tourist zones. Requiring first aid kits and waste receptacles enhances passenger safety and cleanliness. So these laws ensure that tricycles, pedicabs, and kalasas operate efficiently, safely, and in harmony with modern transportation systems. They also prioritize road safety, regulate highways use, and maintain quality standards for traditional transportation methods like kalasas. So that's all for this chapter, but before I end this video, I will leave you a quote or an inspirational quote to ponder upon, and this is by Seth Godin, stating that the only thing worse than starting something and failing is not starting something again. So we all know that in some cases, failure is inevitable, and it's natural to be disappointed and be frustrated sometimes, but don't let that stop you from starting something new. And again, my name is Maria Ellen P. Onyot of Best HM3A, and thank you for listening, and let's meet once again next time.